Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be going over my process of building this beautiful unicorn and princess organic. I use this organic because I wanted to practice doing organics. It's something that I really love doing, but that I want to get better at. So I'm going to bring you through my process and see what I learned throughout this build. So to start off, I'm using some voxel balls to get a general shape of my horse's core body in place, making sure that it has a straight spine, and that its butt and shoulders are a good distance from each other. Of course, at first, that wasn't the case. They weren't at all a good distance from each other or proportionally correct, but I needed to get some more body parts in place before I could determine that. So I mark out some rough legs, thinking roughly where I want the position to be. I am using a reference image for this, but I don't have one exact reference image that I'm using. I'm looking at a lot of different pictures of horses and drawings of unicorns to kind of figure out maybe what I want, what leg position would be realistic, but I never find one that's in the complete correct position that I want. So I sketch in some rough legs, and then I need to start figuring out proportions more exactly. These hind legs were a real challenge to work with. I end up looking up the skeleton of a horse, and that helps me quite a lot because understanding what the bones are doing helps me to understand why the muscles are shaped the way that they are, and therefore I can shape the legs much better. At this stage in the build, we should be thinking a lot about proportions, so I need to get the rest of my body parts in place. For example, currently we have a neck, kind of, and no head. So I'm going to mark out roughly the position that my head is going to be in so I can start thinking about that. And then when I zoom out and look at my horse's body, I can see right away quite a lot of problems. For example, the unicorn is currently way too skinny and the shoulders and butt were too close to each other. So I need to move that across and then work on fleshing this unicorn out a little bit more. Once I'm sort of beginning to get an idea of what I want, I decide that it would be a good idea to get my legs a little bit more finalized because I can always move them with the move command in World Edit if I don't like exactly where they are. So, using my references images, I try to work out a general leg position. Doing this mostly by hand as the legs are too tiny to work brushes on. I want to make sure that none of the legs are too straight, but they do look like they're bearing weight. This was quite a challenge with this front one that I'm currently working on, because having it go straight down looked very plain, so I decided to tilt it backwards just a couple blocks to add that little bit of shape to it. The other front leg is going to be bent upwards, and this back leg was actually something that I hadn't quite thought about. A little oversight on my part. It was a little too long, because this back leg, along with the front leg, had to be touching the ground and bearing weight, so I had to account for this in its position. The correction I made, I think, makes the unicorn look much more realistic. Now it's time to get a proper head in place. So for heads on organics, I usually do them off to the side and build them straight. So you can see that the unicorn's position causes the head to be at an angle, but if I build it straight and then rotate it, say, 30 degrees, it'll be much easier for me to get this head at the correct shapes. Although rotating it does still make it look a little weird and you have to go through and hand smooth, it's a lot easier than just trying to build it on a 30-degree angle, in my opinion. It is very difficult to get this head in the right position though and get the neck the right length. Very challenging. I asked for quite a lot of advice on this and almost everybody had a different opinion on what the neck length should be. Anyways, now that that's worked out, it's time to work on the tail a little bit. So for the hair in this organic project, it was very challenging because the unicorn and princess are outside. We have to think about a lot of things. We have to think about movement, we have to think about gravity, and we have to think about wind. And all of these things sort of have to work together, and it causes sort of a chaos in your brain when you try to think about it. I don't think I really nailed the shapes on the unicorn's tail, but by the time I got to its mane, I was kind of figuring things out a little more. To start with the mane, I started on its forehead, because I had to work that part around the unicorn's horn, of course. And now that that is in place, our unicorn is looking quite a lot more like a unicorn, if you ask me. Now working out some of those hairs. So for the tail, I used the curve command quite a lot to start me off on my shapes, but I didn't do that for the mane. For the mane, I wanted it to look like different sections of the mane were all blowing together in the wind, or that the movement was all fluid. So I worked them out by hand, and although that took a very long time, I think the effect ended up looking much nicer than it would have normally. And I really like the way that this unicorn's mane worked out. Now that we have our unicorn shape pretty much completely done, I mean, look at him. Just gorgeous. It's time to work on our princess, of course. So for our princess, I'm using some voxel balls and then using the blend ball command, alternating gunpowder and an arrow. This allows me to get a human shape in fairly efficiently. This was a technique taught to me by a player by the name of Josie, and I am so appreciative of them for teaching me this technique because it's so good for portraying movement in your organics. You can see here that I actually place the unicorn on the ground so that I can work out what height I want my human to be next to the unicorn. This is something that's very important to work out early because you don't want it to be wrong, and you need to get that leg length correct early on. Now that I've got some rough proportions, I'm moving her over to the side. Something that I advise you using when doing that is actually the -M flag for copy. So I'm copying -M, and because my organic is made completely of gold, I can copy -M41 and it will only copy gold blocks. That way, I can paste her next to my unicorn and then take her away from my unicorn without affecting the unicorn at all, because the unicorn only has gold in its horn. It's not a big deal. Now that that's all worked out, I can paste my organic in next to the unicorn and start working out those arm positions. For this, I'm using the line command. I want the princess to be reaching up and touching the unicorn, to have a little touch of interaction there. Working on smoothing all of these arms out, and then we need to work out a head. So for the head, I paste what I had over to the side, and then try to use the sphere command to work out a couple. Same as with the unicorn, I work on it straight and then paste it in at a 45-degree angle. It's much easier to build them straight and paste them in on an angle than it is to just build them on an angle, in my opinion. Although some others say it's much easier to just build it on an angle. I don't know. I guess it's personal preference. For the princess's dress, I'm going to be trying out the spline command. This is the first time I'd ever used this, and basically what you just do is you use a curve to create a nice curvy fabric shape, and then the spline command sort of connects the dots. I'll link a tutorial in the description that's really good if you want to try this out for yourself. It worked really well for the dress. Now for the thing that I've been procrastinating for the majority of this video, the hands. Hands on organics are so challenging to get right because it's so easy to do them too small or too large and not make them look realistic. With a little bit of effort though, I managed to get mine in the correct position. Now we're going to be working on the ribbon of this dress, and this is probably my favorite part of the princess's dress, is this gorgeous ribbon that's flowing out in the wind behind her. I also did this with the spline command, and I tried to make them look like they were kind of separated, and I just love the way that that looks, like it's blowing in the wind. Now for the rest of her wardrobe, the shirt out of some emerald blocks. And after getting the ribbon in place by using the cylinder command and rotating it and pasting that in, I think our shapes are finally done. Now that that's done, we can work on the coloring, and this is where things get really fun. I love working out all of the coloring and getting all of the final textures and details in place. So after some base colors on our princess, I then go in and pick out a palette for my unicorn. Somebody in my Discord suggested white and blue, so I decided to go for that. I used the lighter whites on the top, like for example snow and wool, and then towards the unicorn's belly and hooves, I used things like diorite and clay to sort of put in some shading, give the illusion that it's darker down there, even when sometimes it actually isn't. For the mane and tail, I'm going to be going with a blue gradient. I just love the way this looks, so mythical. After some final details on the hooves with andesite, our texturing on our unicorn will be complete. I just wanted to do that on the hooves to kind of get that well-defined shape. Now the spline command can only go so far with our dress, so I actually have to smooth out those shapes, get everything the way that I want by hand, of course. I mean, World Edit cannot do everything for you. And then we can work out some details on her shirt. So because she is royalty, I wanted to add in some gold on her shirt, as well as on her pants eventually, and then of course some details on the princess's skirt. I even added some glass overlay to make it look more full. On the ribbon, we're going with some texturing. I even used netherrack here. I think it might be the first time I've used netherrack in an organic, but it looks fantastic with the pinks and reds. Now for the princess's hair. This was very challenging. I mean, hair is just, there's so many things to think about. Getting it all to flow together and look full, but not too stringy. Very, very challenging. I give our princess a little gold circlet to help hold her hair down, but also remind us that she is royalty, even if she is not the queen. Now, we need to delete the floor out from under them and put a proper platform for them to stand on to kind of give this organic a bit more of a finished look. Once that's done, I want to focus some details on our unicorn. So, for example, I want to get some flowers around the unicorn's neck. I love this simple little detail that this adds, and it kind of looks like maybe the princess added those flowers to her beautiful unicorn here. I love all the different flowers and the leaves. They really fit together well with the colors on the princess's dress. Speaking of that, we need to add just a little bit more color and also give her some pants with that same gold trim just to tie everything together. Now, some more texturing on our unicorn's face and we are almost done. All we have to do now is work on our ground here. So I wanted to add a simple dirt path, and although I'm not doing terraforming, I thought adding in some grass would also look good to kind of finalize the build and add a little bit of atmosphere. That's it, our build is complete. Thank you guys so much for watching. This organic was so much fun to do, and I love getting the chance to practice and improve in my organics. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!